businesses face many challenges, and one that's not commonly thought about is potential cyber threats. But there are things you can do to protect yourself.
Here to teach us more about it is Tony UcedaVelez. He is the CEO of VerSprite Security. Welcome in. This is such a relevant topic, Tony. We're thrilled to talk to you about it.
Appreciate being here.
There's something called the threat landscape.
That's right.
What do you think the average person should be concerned with?
So interesting times today. There's a lot of misinformation. So the threat landscape today that affects everybody from grandma to those children that are getting online is misinformation, right? There's a lot of information that's being cast in news outlets or online news outlets or social media especially, where they're trying to influence the narrative, right? In our local communities, in our national politics, different ideologies. And so where does this come into play with cybersecurity is really trying to understand how a lot of that information can cause us to take actions in our email, in our social media accounts, and the software that we use in an insecure way because we're influenced, right? There is a key attack called social engineering, which is basically a form of lying that attackers use to dupe a target individual into getting them to maybe pay a bill or getting them to respond to an email or download and install something, right? So all that really hinges on information, and a lot of attackers, what they're doing today is that they're using misinformation to influence people to make the wrong decisions. So the threat landscape today, of course, you have malware and ransomware. We've heard about ransomware affecting a lot of our city governments and corporations, some of the services that we use from as a consumer. And so that's still very present. Extortion, right, is the cybercrime aspect. But individuals are also being targeted. You have individual cyber criminals that are interested in extorting individual families, maybe people of influence, politicians, local celebrities, etc.
Absolutely.
Scary stuff.
And anyone can really, be sort of subject to this. So can you tell us what threat modeling is and how can people use that to protect themselves?
Sure. So threat modeling sounds really fancy, but it's just a model of threats that organizations typically can use to say, who's going to attack me and what are the likely ways that they're going to do this? And so at an individual level, we kind of have our individual threat models, right? So I live in the southeast of the United States, and so how to secure my personal home might be different from your respective locations, right? So we innately figure this out. Corporations today, unfortunately, they haven't used this aspect of threat modeling. And so it's a way for them to say, take a step back and say, what do I need to protect? Why do I need to protect it? And what defenses do I have for that protection? We do this today when we think about our own homes. Do we need firearms? Do we need cameras? Do we need maybe a watchdog?
Right.
Do we need a moat around the house? Right. So it's basically it's a model of threats. How do you evaluate your own business? And you might be a small business out here in Las Vegas and beyond. And in the tech space, you have to think about, if you're going to think about the sustaining your business model, right? You have to think about what is the cyber aspect that could actually bring me down and I can basically not make money or lose some customers.
I love that you mentioned businesses as well, because the next thing we were going to move on to was cyber threats to businesses.
Right.
And how do you protect yourself? I would imagine, like you mentioned, for residential, each business has their individual kind of security plan to look at.
Yes, exactly. Yep, they do. There's two narratives there on cybersecurity for businesses. Yeah, I think the status quo today, and it's important to mention, is that a lot of regulations, state, federal, international regulations, say you have to do this. So businesses are tempted to say, well, I'm just going to do this and I'm done. Right? So that's a kind of a false sense of security. So really, if they embrace a threat modeling approach, they're going to think about, well, what am I doing about my perimeter network? What am I doing about my laptops? What sort of software do I need to run there? What about when I have my employees be what's called phished? Where they're basically sending like a fraudulent email trying to get them to install something. So business owners, tech product owners, they have to think about the security aspect of that product and try to build a threat model around it.
I tell you what, Tony, this is fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
We're going to let people know where they can go to keep in touch with you. Keep your digital information safe. If you'd like to learn more about everything just discussed with Tony, head over to VerSprite.com.